The goal of Christian parenting is simple. Get your kid to memorize the entire Bible. The Old Testament, the New Testament, heck, we even make our kids memorize the maps. Because once you get it here, it's easier to get to here. So what is the goal for Christian parenting? That's our topic at today's Family Practice. Hi, Ben Burns with Family Trainers, where we get your kids to eat all of their vegetables. Actually, we can't do that, but we can help you build more closeness, cooperation, and Christian influence in your family. Do you remember the book 7 Habits for Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey? I was going to write a book called The 5 Habits for Highly Ineffective People, but I never got around to it. I did finish habit number 1, which is procrastinate. Covey's book came out in 1989, and since then over 40 million copies have sold. It's been translated into 38 different languages. Why? Because it's filled with practical wisdom. Habit number 2 says, begin with the end in mind. And I think that's relevant for us as Christian parents to also begin with the end in mind. So let me ask you this question. When your kids leave home, finally leave home, at age 18 or 22 or age 35, what kind of person do you want them to be? For my wife and I, we want our kids to follow Christ and flourish as the image of God. Now, if you agree with us and have that same desire, then I want to suggest that the goal of Christian parenting is this: to nurture and guide our children, to follow Christ, and flourish as the image of God. So let's unpack that into 3 big ideas. The first part of that goal is to nurture and guide our children. Did you know that Paul used parenting skills to develop the Thessalonians' Christian faith? I wonder what Paul would have sounded like as a parent. All right, kids, it's time for church. Everybody get on the camel. No fighting. And if you goof around in church like you did last week, afterwards there will be no donuts. None. Listen to how Paul describes his interaction with the Thessalonians. But we prove to be gentle among you, as a nursing mother tenderly cares for her own children, just as you know how we were exhorting and encouraging and imploring each one of you as a father would his own children. First, Paul acted like a mother, tenderly caring. He provided love and support. In other words, he nurtured them. Second, he also acted like a father. He was exhorting them. He was providing direction and correction. In other words, he guided them. Paul nurtured and guided the Thessalonians in their faith, and as Christian parents, we need to do the same things with our kids. First, we nurture our kids because life can be hard. Whether you have grade schoolers or middle schoolers or high schoolers, they're going to experience some really tough emotions like loneliness, anxiety, failure, and pain. And they're going to need some significant support as they go through those difficult emotions. We nurture our kids when we empathize with their emotions instead of judging them, when we listen to their ideas instead of criticizing them, and when we recognize their efforts and contributions instead of ignoring them. To nurture is to love. And for me, this has been really hard to do. I've had to learn a lot about becoming a more nurturing dad. And that's why we want to look at 6 loving skills that will help us demonstrate nurturing to our kids. Second, we guide our kids because life can be confusing, especially today. Let's face it, we live in some pretty weird times. And our kids have a lot of questions about themselves, about what they're good at, where they're going in life. They also have questions about what is right and what is wrong. And they even have questions about who God is. And what they need is for us as Christian parents to come alongside them and have conversations that will direct and correct their thinking on these things. To guide is to lead. And I've needed a lot of work in that area because my idea of guiding my kids is being a boss or a dictator. And that doesn't work very well, especially in the teenage years. That's why we're going to look at 6 leading skills that will help us guiding our kids about who God is and how life works. Just a brief comment about how Paul uses the word mother and father in this passage. Though mothers and fathers have unique contributions to the family, Paul is not saying that only mothers can nurture or only fathers can guide. In general, nurturing might come more natural to moms and guiding might come more natural to dads. And maybe that's the way it is in your home, or maybe those strengths are reversed. But the bottom line is that our kids need both nurturing and guiding from both mom and dad in their faith development. The second part of our goal is to help our kids follow Christ. Do you know what a focus group is? It's where a company gets a group of people together to try their product and tell them what they think. And they usually want people to be really honest. You know, I really liked the broccoli scone. That was unique. But was not a big fan of the garlic macchiato. Did you know that Jesus had a kind of focus group with his disciples? It's recorded in Luke chapter 9, verses 18 through 20. It says, Jesus questioned them, saying, "Who do people say that I am?" They answered and said, "John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, but others that one of the prophets of old has risen again." And he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Isn't it interesting that Jesus first starts with what do others think about him, then asks the disciples, "What do you think about me?" And that's the same journey for our kids. They need to move from what others think about him to what they think about him. You see, they know what we believe about Jesus and what their youth pastor believes about Jesus, but they have to come to their own understanding of who he is to them. What our kids believe about Jesus Christ is the most foundational belief they have, and they need to become convinced of two things. First, who is he? Did Jesus really exist in history? Did he really claim to be God? Did he really perform miracles? Did he really die on a cross and then was raised to life 3 days later? Is he really the only way to God in heaven? Who is Jesus Christ to them? And second, is he worth following? French mathematician Blaise Pascal said, "There is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man, which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ." Is that really true? Is Jesus truly the source of life? Does following him really bring joy and fulfillment and meaning in life? Well, if our kids are going to follow Christ, then they have to come to that conclusion for themselves. And we can help. Moms, dads, I know that what we're talking about is really big, our kids' salvation. This is a long-term project to get our kids to understand and follow Christ. And you're going to have some real successes and some real failures. When our kids were littler, they enjoyed spending one-on-one time talking about Jesus before they went to bed. But there were many times that they weren't interested. We had a family devotional once about Jesus getting up early to pray. So I asked the kids, so if Jesus is God and he's praying to the Father who is God, how does that work? My son said, I don't know. Maybe Jesus is schizophrenic. Well, his sisters start laughing like crazy and my wife gives me the... It was a disaster. You're going to have successes and failures. It will be easier to talk to your kids about Jesus when they're little. It'll be harder when they get older. But what they're going to need are ongoing conversations to help them understand who Jesus is and why he's worth following. The third part of our goal is to help our kids flourish as the image of God. We're going to be talking a lot on this channel about what it means to be made in the image and likeness of God. But for now, let's just say it's the ability and responsibility to express some of the characteristics of God. For example, like God, we can love. Like God, we can forgive. Like God, we can create. Now, I don't mean galaxies and planets. I mean create on a smaller scale, like building forts or making sandwiches. Seriously, human beings have some pretty amazing abilities to create beautiful things and do wonderful things that help people. You don't see coyotes building schools or llamas doing surgery, right? Only human beings can do those things because God has given us the capacity to do so. Well, as his creatures, we want our kids to flourish in their ability to love, to create, and have an influence on their world. As we think of our kids flourishing as the image of God, there's 3 ways we hope they will do that. First, we want them to flourish in their character. We want our kids to be honest, hardworking, and responsible. We also want them to know right from wrong. And we want them to be aware of their feelings, but to not be controlled by them. We want our kids to have solid character, so as they move into the world, they will be confident. Second, we want them to flourish in their relationships. We want our kids to have good friends. We want them to be kind and compassionate towards others. We want them to be aware of other people's feelings, but not to be controlled by them. And we want them to learn how to cooperate with the authorities in their lives, like us, their parents, their teachers, their coaches, and eventually their bosses. We want our kids to have good relationships when they leave our homes. And third, we want our kids to flourish in their vocation. We want our kids to discover who God has made them to be, to develop the gifts and abilities that He's given them. We want them to have meaningful careers where they'll keep growing and developing and having a positive influence on the people around them. And we also want to help them find how do they serve in God's kingdom. We want our kids to leave our homes with a sense of vocational direction. Again, this is a long-term project, and it's going to take a lot of patience and observation and encouragement on our part to help our kids discover who God has made them to be. And it's also going to cost a lot of money. All the sports teams, all the sports camps, all the coffee mugs with the team picture on it. And I didn't even get to shoes. Athletic shoes alone are going to bankrupt you. But you know, it's going to be worth the investment to help them find out who God's made them to be. Well, that's the goal of Christian parenting, to nurture and guide our children, to follow Christ, and flourish as the image of God. I want you to know that I understand there's a big difference between reading this goal and achieving this goal. It's going to take a lot of time and patience and perseverance and prayer and practice. But I want to encourage you because I know how much you love your kids and I know how you want them to turn out. And investing your time and energy and frustration into becoming a better parent is worth the investment. I know you want your kids to leave home following Christ and flourishing as the image of God. So hang in there. God's going to help you. So let's get to your workout. At each family practice, you're going to have a workout time to invest in your parenting skills. And I don't want you to blow this off. So for the next 10 to 15 minutes, I want you to work on 3 things. First, reflect. What stood out to you in today's training time? Second, apply. What do you want to do different this week as a result of what you heard today? Third, pray. Spend a few minutes thanking God for your role as a parent and for each of your kids. And then spend a few minutes seeking His help on where you need to grow as a parent. Well, thanks for joining me today at Family Practice. If you'd like to get a copy of today's training outline, as well as some guided questions for your workout, then see the link in the notes section below. If you've enjoyed today's workout, hit the share button and tell a friend. And if you'd like to see more of these workouts, then please consider subscribing. Today, we looked at the goal of Christian parenting. But does the Bible tell us how to do that? Yes, it does. And that's what we're going to look at next time. So until then, remember, to get the family you want takes practice. All right, everybody, bring it in. Hey, Moore, get over here. I said bring it in. All right, family on 3. 1, 2, 3, family.